Hey, welcome to the channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. In today's video, we're going to take a look at an interesting power station option called the Neo 2000. And it's from a company called DaranEner, which is a relative newcomer to the portable power space, having been in business now for maybe 8 years or so. And as I've said in previous videos, I usually get 1 or 2 dozen offers a week from various companies wanting me to review their products on the channel. And I reject the vast majority of these offers because I'm really only interested in reviewing things that I think, have some kind of a standout value or have some features that I think might be worth serious consideration. And so when I looked at the specs on the Neo 2000 power station, the specific things that kind of jumped out at me were that it was one of the least expensive 2,000 watt-hour power stations that I've seen. And it also had a very solid lineup of other features that we'll get into in a minute. But it also has a 5-year warranty on top of all of that. And so I thought this might be something worth checking out and sharing with you. But before we get into the specs and performance testing, let's jump back into time about 8 weeks or so and see what comes in the box. All right, here's the box, for scale. It's a monster. Right off the bat, we've got a Neo 2000 power station manual. So I'll have to go through that. All right, let's see what's in this box. Looks like a big, beefy AC cable. So this apparently does have an integrated AC adapter. Let's see what else is in here. Looks like pretty simple. We got an MC4 to XT60 cable. Pretty decent gauge. Looks like probably about, if I had to guess, 14 gauge wire. All right, so, and then we've got just a nice Type C to Type C cable. Never have too many of those, or maybe you can. All right, really well packed. Whew, this is the Neo 2000. This is kind of a big guy. Very impressed with the very rugged ABS plastic housing on this thing. All right, so there's an LED light on the back, which I will show you in a bit. Let me take a look at the front. 3 AC plugs across the top. We got some other inlets here. So this is our charging ports. There's our XT60. Looks like a breaker trip reset. And then our AC cable connector right there. Got some USB ports along the bottom. Looks like 2 Type C ports and 4 Type A ports. Let me take another quick look at those. Yeah, so those Type C ports are PD 100 watt delivery, and all of the Type A ports are Quick Charge 3.0. So that's pretty nice. And then over here, we've got our standard accessory charger, car charger, socket, and you've got 4. That's quite interesting. This is the most number of DC 5521 accessory ports that I've seen on a power station. So that's pretty interesting. I've never even used one on mine, but yeah, I'd be curious. I'd like to understand a little bit more how you guys might be using them if you have them on other devices. So feel free to leave those in the comments below, because I would definitely like to know more about who's using these. Anyway, so let's jump forward into the future several weeks and see how it all came out. All right, so we're back to the present time, and I just described some of the output ports in terms of detail. So let's talk about some of the other specs, and then we'll jump into the performance testing. We'll find out a few interesting things about the Neo 2000 that I think you probably should be aware of. So let's first talk about price, since that kind of jumped out at me initially as a significant differentiator. And be aware that pricing can and does change from time to time. So the pricing data that I'm going to be sharing here right now is accurate at this moment that I'm producing the video, but it could be different by the time you're watching this video. So just be aware of that. The Neo 2000 is available either on Amazon or direct from DaranEner's website. And on their website, they've currently got it priced at $1,259 or $1,259 US. And on Amazon, it's priced at $14.99, but there's also currently a $300 coupon that you can apply. And that brings the price down to a cool $1,200. And that is pretty low pricing for a power station that's got a 2,000 watt-hour lithium iron phosphate battery and a 2,000 watt pure sine wave AC inverter, especially when you factor in that it can also take 600 watts of solar input. It can fully recharge via AC in under 2 hours, and it has wireless charging. It's got UPS capability, and as I previously did say, it's got a 5-year warranty on top of all that. So as long as you do register it on their website, the default warranty is 2 years, so just be aware of that. So a little more detail on that 600 watts of solar charging capacity. The input voltage range on this guy is 33 volts to 60 volts max at a maximum current of up to 20 amps. So that's a very practical input range for a 2,000 watt-hour power station. But let's go find out if all of this works as advertised. All right, let's do a DC discharge test. Take this thing up to 10 amps. We will let this thing run as long as it takes and find out what kind of capacity we get out of the DC ports. All right, as you can see here through the DC output ports, we got a usable capacity of 1,732 watt hours. All right, one thing that I do want to point out on this Neo 2000 is when you are charging it, notice there is no LED indicator light here. So when I charge it, the AC inverter will come on, and that's what that is. And if you look at the display, you'll see the AC inverter is actually going to flash. And so why that's something you need to be aware of is now the AC inverter is on. When this is done charging, if I remove power from this, the AC inverter will stay on. It doesn't automatically shut off. It may after a while, but not until it actually consumes some power. So I actually had this thing charged up to 100% just, I don't know, an hour or so ago, maybe 2 hours ago, and I pulled the power and I just came back down. I was going to run a capacity test on it, realized that the AC inverter is actually still on. So make sure when you're done charging this thing, you do shut the AC inverter off unless you need it to be on for some reason. All right, let's do an AC discharge test on this Neo 2000, and we'll find out how much usable capacity we can get through the AC inverter. Now, I've already got the AC inverter on. As you can see, I've got it 100% charged. I've got an oil heater on the floor, so I'm going to go ahead and plug this guy in. All right, so we're going to let this run. Let me make sure I do have this reset. I do. And we're going to track how many watt hours we can get out of this thing all the way to running it to empty. So we'll check back when it's done and find out. All right, looks like our AC discharge test is done. In order to read the results, I got to plug this meter into a power source. And we got 1,679 watt hours. That's not too bad. All right, I have connected through the XT60 cable, just out of shot here, I have got 600 watts of solar coming in to the Neo 2000. Now, it is a little after 8 p.m. in the evening, and the sun is basically already set. So you can kind of see it's got 0 watts in. It detects that there's a connection because we are getting some voltage in that connection, but very, very low amperage. And it doesn't have enough to really do what it needs to do. But you can see we're at 8%. I'm going to leave this plugged in, and we're going to see if this thing handles this kind of no sun condition with the input here just fine or not, and that it wakes itself up in the morning when I hopefully have some actual output coming off of this 600 watt solar input. So we'll find out. It's very early in the morning and the sun is just starting to come up, and it's not got a direct path to the solar panel. So we're still a little bit low, but we're already charged 3% this morning, even though it's only been really charging for probably about 30 minutes. So we're doing pretty well so far. We're going to keep an eye on this, see if I can top this back off in just one single day or less and see how long it takes, and at the 600 watt solar max. So we'll check back later in the day and see how we're doing. All right, it's about 11 a.m. You can see we're currently at about 450 watts here of solar input. We're all the way up to 45%. It does say we got about 2.5 hours or 2.6 hours remaining at this current charge rate to top the unit off. One thing I will point out, maybe I can boost the audio here. You can listen to the unit. It actually sounds a little bit like somebody running a leaf blower in the distance. It's not loud, but you can hear it kind of pulsing and cycling. Let me see if I can boost that up so you can hear that. So as you can see, that is very quiet. 43 decibels is not bad. So yeah, even though that isn't very loud, if I were trying to take a nap right next to this thing while it was doing this, it might actually annoy me a little bit. But it is so quiet that I think for most people you're probably not even going to notice that it's kind of making that strange noise. All right, as you can see, we are actually just before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We are fully charged up. It has stopped taking input from solar, so I'll go ahead and turn that off. And yeah, we've still got a good 4, maybe 5 hours of usable sun left in the day. And with this 400 watt or 600 watt input, we were actually able to top this thing off completely. So, all right, I wanted to test whether or not if I could output an AC load while charging via solar on this Neo 2000. And as you can see right now, I've got solar input icon and I am inputting 368 watts as shown right here in the lower right hand corner. Now I've got an AC load on here, but I don't have the inverter turned on. So I want to just kind of show you how this behaves so you're aware. It actually behaves the way we would want, but it's not apparent from the display. So let's see what I mean by that. I find this AC inverter power switch to be a little weird. It's like a 1 second press and then it comes on a couple minutes later, and then shutting it off is just a quick press and then it'll shut off. But I kind of like to just hold it on until the AC inverter kicks on, and then I release. But watch what happens. We've got 1200 watts of input. Keep your eye on this solar. See, notice the solar goes away. Initially, I thought that meant that it shut off solar charging when you had an AC load applied. But I've actually since come to find out that that is not the case. So let me go ahead and unplug this oil heater. Basically what is happening is that because the oil heater had such a high load, it wasn't properly showing the input charge from the solar panels. So if I put on a lower load, so as you can see, we have an output load here of 192 watts on the AC inverter, and it shows that we're inputting 126, but this is actually kind of a net number. We're actually inputting much higher than that. So if I were to turn this heater off, you'll see this number go up. Should go up to around 300 or so. As the charge controller reevaluates what it's doing. Yeah, so 348 watts, and then I turn the load back on and you'll see this drop again. But it does continue to charge even though we're applying an AC load while we are solar charging. That, to me, that is a critical feature, and I think something that every power station should be able to do. And I just wanted to point that out because initially when that went out on the higher AC load, I thought it was disabling the solar charging, but that is actually not what it's doing. So just be aware of that. All right, let's check the AC output from this Neo 2000 and find out what we actually get. So we're getting 111 volts. So I guess you could call it standard 110. All right, now according to the specs, the Neo 2000 does have UPS capability. So I've got my sacrificial laptop here plugged into the AC ports on the top, and it is powered up as you can see, and we are running, see a little bright light there, so the AC inverter is on. And you see it's flashing and we're at 100%, and I do have wall power plugged into the Neo 2000. So what should happen is that it should be passing through electricity direct from the wall power to the laptop right now. So let's find out if I simulate a power outage by pulling the wall power from here and make sure that my laptop stays running. And if you've seen some other tests like this, I have removed the battery on this laptop, so it will go out immediately if I try to pull power. So let me just see what happens. So that's a fail. So the AC inverter stays on and it flashes, but my laptop does in fact go out. All right, we're going to try this again. I've got a desktop computer up here just out of frame, so you can see the monitor here, and I've got both the monitor and the laptop plugged into this little extension cord, which is plugged into the AC power. So again, we're going to find out if this is a little bit bigger watt draw. We're just about, we're kind of bouncing around here, about 80 watts or so. We were only pulling about 14 watts off the laptop, even though it didn't have a battery. So we're going to find out if this fares any better with a desktop. So this is just an older Dell tower, and we're going to pull the simulated power outage here. By pulling the power, we'll see if the monitor shuts off. Alright, so the desktop fared a little bit better. Plug that back in, and again it switched back over to wall power with no blip. So I heard the click in the AC inverter as it switched back over to pass-through power. So it definitely is working as a UPS. Let me try that one more time. Definitely working. And just so you can see here, if I pull this it's immediately going to go out. Okay, so yes, UPS does work on this, but be aware that maybe low power devices in particular, like a laptop, usually laptops have their own battery. This is not a big deal. But anyway, it does work on my desktop computer with 2 tests. Seems to pass that test. All right, so as you saw in the performance testing, this power station does manage to live up to its performance specs, but there are some functional quirks that you should be aware of, and they're not necessarily deal breakers for everyone, especially at this price point, but let's recap what those quirks are for you. So in solar charging, the solar charge controller does make a faint but noticeable pulsing sound, and I did confirm with the manufacturer that this is normal behavior and it shouldn't be something that you should be concerned about. But if you're charging this thing outside, which you typically would be, it's a complete non-issue. But if you're running a long cable from the solar panels and maybe charging this inside, it might be something that you find a little bit distracting. And another solar charging related quirk that I found is that if you were to leave this power station plugged into solar overnight and then let it automatically start charging when the sun comes up, it will do that. However, the charge controller will not successfully track the maximum power point in this particular scenario, and if you leave it in that state, it will charge well below what the panels are actually generating. So in my case, I was only getting about 185 watts when my panels were producing around 475 watts at maximum power point. So there are some power stations that don't charge at all if you do this particular scenario, and there are others that kind of handle it just fine. So this power station kind of falls right into the middle of that. So it does charge, but just not at full MPPT input. So the solution, of course, is to simply wait for the sun to come up a little bit more to full visibility and then plug in the solar power, and it'll take off and charge normally for the rest of the day. Now, one more solar charging consideration that you'll probably want to be aware of is that since it does only have that one charging port and the minimum input voltage on that input port is 33 volts, that means you cannot charge this power station from your car's accessory power port, since it typically can only provide 12 to 24 volts at best. And when charging via solar, you are going to have to make sure you're using either a single 36 volt panel or maybe string 2 18 volt panels together in series. You can't really connect a single 18 volt panel to this power station and charge with it. It just doesn't produce enough voltage. Finally, we did see that this power station's UPS capability worked on my desktop PC, but it didn't work on my laptop PC. And I did test both of those scenarios repeatedly, and I got consistent results every time. So just be aware that it does have a functional UPS mode, but it may not switch over fast enough for some devices, especially those that have a kind of a low capacitance power supply. So to summarize my overall impression, maybe some final thoughts on this Neo 2000, I'd say that if those particular performance quirks that I cited are things that are deal breakers for you, well then, yeah, you probably want to go to a different route. You'll probably pay a little bit more to avoid some of those compromises. But if those are things that really don't add much value to you, or they don't really provide much inconvenience to you, and low cost is one of your top priorities, then I think this is a very reasonable option to consider in that 2,000 watt capacity class, especially with a 5-year warranty. All right, I hope you found some of this information helpful. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could give me a thumbs up on the video. It does really help. And if you didn't, by the way, go ahead and click the thumbs down button if you must. And hey, while you're at it, click it twice, if that makes you feel better. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I do hope you'll consider coming back for the next one. Maybe check out some of the other videos I've got on the channel. You might find something there that you'll find helpful in some way. So anyway, that's all I got for you now. Until next time, have fun out there.